This is Mena Lee Jones with Faithful Walk Healing Ministries, and I hope everyone's doing well today. Today is Wednesday, October 11th of 2023, and I'm coming to you today with a prophecy update. Today I'm going to share a couple things that the Lord has given me, and as everybody knows, this past Saturday that Israel, the land of Israel, was attacked by Hamas. It's been all over the news. Of course, everyone, I'm sure, is aware of it. And there's a lot of things that has taken place over the last 5 and 6 days, almost going into a week now, since this attack. Today, I decided to, instead of just doing my normal prophecy update, which you all are, who are subscribers, are used to, I did decide to bring in my sister in the Lord, Joanie Stahl. Now, you all have probably seen us in many videos in the past. We've done these things periodically over the years. It's typically me being a guest on her end. I actually have never brought her as a guest on my end, but we definitely wanted to do this today just to bring clarity, probably from an angle that most evangelicals are not getting as far as this war is concerned, and talking about scriptures, what season we're in, because I really feel like a lot of evangelicals are lacking that. And so we're going to talk about some things. We're just going to let the Holy Spirit lead us. We're going to try not to overwhelm you and make this too long, but there are some very important facts today that we definitely feel that the body of Christ is in dire need of knowing. And as I say, with everything, with all things, take it to prayer for confirmation, because at the end of the day, we have to know the voice of God for ourselves. So I just want to open up with that. Joanie, before I go into what the Lord has shown me, I just want to thank you again for being on this program with me, or for doing the prophecy update with me. If you wanted to open up and say anything before I go on and share, I'm going to do so.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. Before we get started, I want to just really thank you that this is a stand-up moment, that you're doing and that you've invited me to do. We've been seeing so much. We've been so focused, obviously, because what we're seeing is unprecedented. It is absolutely prophetic. We are absolutely in that time of Jacob's trouble. So it's a game changer. And therefore, we have to be on target. We have to be in lockstep with the word of God and in prophecy. So I'm looking forward to how the Holy Spirit will take what we are saying, because there's been a lot of prayer that has gone into this. And we want the ultimate eyes on Christ.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Yes, amen. So I'm going to just open up with you, with everyone today, saints. I just want to share what even led up to me doing this video. Honestly and truly, the last video that I put out, I don't know, a little over a month ago, I genuinely within myself thought that that was going to probably be the last video of the year. In this season, the Lord is not really leading me to do a lot of social media stuff. He's got me focused on other things, which everyone should be sensitive to seasons. Typically, when you're in ministry, you don't have the same season forever and ever. If you do, then there's probably an issue with that. But nevertheless, considering the things that have transpired and what the Lord had given me about 3 a.m. on this past Sunday is the reason why we're here back again today. So I'm going to open up and just sharing with you what happened at 3 a.m. on Sunday. So Saturday evening, this past Saturday, which was October 7th. Now, October 7th was Shabbat, or the Sabbath, and it was also the last day of Tabernacles, which is also called Sukkot. And as we know, that is where the surprise attack happened on Israel that particular day, and through Hamas. And according to reports, they were infiltrated through land, air, and sea. I recently saw a report that indicated that it was something like over 2,000 people or 2,000 troops. I don't know if you would call them troops when it comes to Hamas or soldiers, but they were saying that in all it was about 2,000 that had come in and infiltrated or broke the barrier of Israel on last Saturday. Now, and so seeing all of that, that evening, just kind of keeping up with bits and pieces of it, um, I went to bed, but at 3 in the morning, I woke up and I was led into prayer. That's not an unusual time for me. To be in prayer, that's typically a lot of the times that the Lord speaks to me. When He does speak to me, He can talk to me at any time of the day, but it's typically about that fourth watch time. And so, but I was led into prayer. So I got up and I went into prayer. And again, it was 3 a.m. It would have been Saturday night, but it would have been technically Sunday morning. And while I was in, I began to just pray for everybody. I was praying for Israel. I was praying for Gaza. I was praying for the Palestinians. And that's something that, mature Christians should be doing, because really, honestly, and truly, when we look at the situation, people are dying on both sides. Innocent people are dying on both sides. Children are dying on both sides. And here's the other bigger thing. We're talking about groups of people on both sides who are dying without Christ. Okay. And so there are souls being lost on both sides of the fence in this situation. And when I hearing about the children that were being taken hostage and kidnapped and the women, my heart just really went out. So I was praying, but I understood this season. Like, one of my favorite lines is the sons of Issachar, they understood the times. I understood what transpired in that short amount of time. At this point, it hadn't even been 24 hours, what it meant. And so I began to pray also for the body of Christ. And then I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, I prayed for the body of Christ across the planet to strengthen us, to prepare us for this season. And I'm telling you all of this for a reason. And then I asked the Lord, if there was anything that I needed to know, any additional things maybe He wanted me to share with, I was thinking more so the group or my husband or things of that nature. And so this is what led up to what He gave me. So I wanted to share with you, after that prayer, I went into a night vision and I was shown multiple things. I'm not going to go through detail for detail, every single thing that I saw, but I'm going to highlight very important things. And I actually shared this with Joanie over the weekend. I actually called her and told her about it. I actually called you on Monday, I think, and told you about it on the wee hours of Monday morning, because we're early risers, both of us, and share with her what's going on. And so the three areas that I want to talk about, I think the first main thing that I want you all to know that the Lord told me, and then I'm going to go into this part of the night vision. When I asked the Lord, what was this? What did this mean? Because over the last, several years, decades, we know that Israel has been attacked, right? This is not something that's uncommon, although we know, according to what they say, this was the worst attack that they had encountered in 50 years. Now, the third thing I want to loop back around and add, besides it being the end of Sukkot on the Sabbath, it was also 50 years, not to the date, but almost to the date, from the Yom Kippur War that happened in 1973. So, and according to Israel, they said, we have not seen anything like this since the Yom Kippur War. So obviously this was something on a greater scale than the typical missiles, occasional missiles and rockets. And again, not undermining those things. Those are nuisances, but it was nothing to this scale and that they had seen in 50 years. Well, I asked the Lord, I said, well, where is this? What does this mean? Is this going to be like a few days situation? Because they're going to just eradicate this in a few days or a few weeks or what have you. And this is what the Lord spoke to me. He said Psalm 83. As in what a lot of people prophetically call the Psalm 83 war. Now, if you're not familiar with that, you can do your own research. I encourage you to do some research on it, but also look into the scripture itself, because it is a declaration against the enemies of Israel and putting in God's declaration against the enemies of Israel. But this is what He told me. Now, from that, I want to tell you about this portion of the night vision that was shown to me by the Lord. And so in one part of this mission, I was walking into different rooms, like just to give you a little bit of a backdrop. And this one particular place or doorway entrance that I walked out of, I actually ended up outside. And I saw 2 IDF soldiers, but they were not just soldiers. Now, I personally do not know what their ranks are in the IDF. And the IDF, if you don't know, is the military, the Israeli military. Now, here in the United States, with our 5-branch military, we have captains, lieutenants, sergeants, all of those different types of rankings. So I couldn't tell you if that's the same that they use there. However, what I knew is that these two men were heads. They could have been like, lieutenants or captains or something to that, but they were heads over like platoons, groups of soldiers. And both of them, one was standing to the left, one was standing to the right. There was like a big space between the two. They were both leaning up against military vehicles. And I'm watching this. Now, this is me observing. And there is a man that comes to address them. And this man, I'm watching him from behind and from his backside, and he walks up to these two IDF captains or leaders or what have you, or heads, I should call them, and he began speaking to them. Now, this man, what caught my attention is that this man was not dressed in anything that was modern. He had on a simple like turban or robe, not turban, excuse me, tunic is the word I'm looking for. He had on a simple tunic, but it was brown. He had a staff in his hand. The man was great in age, had a very long beard. His beard was white. Like I could see this, and I'm looking at him. I didn't see it directly into his face because I'm looking at him kind of from a back slanted angle. And he's speaking to these two IDF captains or again leaders, and he begins telling them that they had been anointed, that God had anointed them to take their two groups, whatever these groups were of IDF soldiers, to go into the enemy territory, okay? To go into the enemy territory and to conquer. And that God was with them. He had chosen them and he had anointed them to go in. However, they were specifically told that they would not return home. In other words, both of these men would be killed in combat, in battle. So he was letting them know up front, you won't return home, but I need you to know that God has sent you, that he has appointed you and sent you, and that you will conquer the enemy lines. So I'm watching this from behind. And the last thing that this man says, he says, and know that Psalm 83 will protect you. That's what he said to them. Now I'm watching this man and I'm within myself. I'm asking the Lord, I didn't move my lips, I didn't vocalize anything, I did not address the three men that were in front of me, but I asked within myself, within my spirit, I said, Lord, who is this? Like, what am I seeing? And I had instant understanding, instant revelation that the man that was standing in front of these IDF soldiers was Elijah. Now, even when I shared this with Joanie, I said, Joanie, I know this sounds crazy. And she's like, no, it doesn't sound crazy. But I was like, I knew it was Elijah. Now, have I seen anything of the bits of Elijah? No, I've never seen Elijah before. I know I've heard stories of people going to heaven or having spiritual encounters and getting to meet this person, that person, Apostle Paul. That has not been Mena's experience, okay? That is not the portion that God has given me in dreams and visions over the years or out-of-body experiences that I've had. So, but I knew in my spirit that this man was Elijah. Now we know, and just to make sure I'm clarifying everything, that we know that in the last days it is prophesied both in the Old Testament, and we can say the New Testament, even though it doesn't specify in the New Testament, that the two witnesses are going to be in Jerusalem and Israel during, the tribulation or what have you. Now, everyone knows that typically everybody agrees at least one of those is Elijah. The other one, some debate, is Enoch. Makes really good sense to me. And some people say it may be Moses. But nevertheless, we know that we're clear that one of them is more than likely going to be Elijah. So I want to make sure that I clarify this. Is this saying, are you saying that Elijah's going, is this the time of the two witnesses? That is not what I'm saying. I want to make sure that I clarify any speculation, okay? That is not what I'm saying. That is not what I am saying, and that is not what I'm not saying. Let me put it that way, okay? But what I am saying is this is what I was shown. And also with that, the night vision confirmed again what the Lord told me, that this is Psalm 83 war. Okay. Now, another part of that vision that I want to share too, part two, is that I feel like is of real importance. There was another scene where I saw in this private place groups of Muslim, just Muslim people, I should say. They were all men, but there were two types. Number one side, all of the men had on all white. They had some of them had turbans, or they had just like the white head coverings, kind of like what we see in Saudi Arabia. But they were all dressed in all white. So they had white robes, white, everything was white. And they were standing on one side, and then next to them was a second group of Muslim men, again, all men, and they had on all red. Now, I shared this with Joanie because I told her, I said, now, I know that there's different tribes, like we've got the Shiites and the Sunnis and the Sheiks, and all these different things, and some of them, believe it or not, they fight within their own groups. They don't like each other in that sense. And I know for the most part, like with the white represent, or the group that wears the white, but I've never seen groups that wore the red. And I'm going to let Joanie kind of emphasize a little, because she explained that part to me about it representing more so the leadership in the Islamic countries or Islamic religion, that they wear red. So she helped to clarify that for me, but this is what I saw. So two groups, they had come together. Even though they were, one group was on one side, the other group was on the other side, they had come together. And here's the interesting part. They were meeting with a man who I knew. Once again, I was like, Lord, who is this? The Lord's talking to me. I knew immediately whoever this man was, he was a leader in the Department of Homeland Security. Now, I was given that knowledge as well. And now Department DHS has quite a few people in it, okay? But we also know DHS is us. It belongs to us, the American. And they were working out a deal. Now, I couldn't hear everything that was being said, like details, but I knew that they had come to this head in the Department of Homeland Security to work out a deal, okay? What that deal involved, I don't know, okay? But I understood that they were coercing with the American government, okay? So that's the second thing that I want to mention. The third thing that I want to mention that the Lord spoke to me, and this is something he said to me, in the process of these things that he showed me, was that America is next. And when he said that, what he was talking about was this: what we're seeing going on, this infiltration of the enemy, so to speak, this rise up, this insurgence between Palestinians and the Israelis, the Jews, what have you, and that's causing this war that we, and when I say we, I'm talking about American soil, okay, because I know people from all over the world listen to these videos, okay? So I'm emphasizing American soil, that we needed to take heed to this because we were next. Now, I'm going to add a little bit of something in that and say this. I know that when it comes to the evangelical church, and I'm not saying that I agree with this, but I'm going to make this statement because I feel like this is really important. I have heard a lot over the years, okay, of ministry, especially with, I'm going into almost 2 decades of ministry now. Where a lot of people talk about the parallels between Israel and America. And we've, most of us, if you've been around the charismatic evangelical, you've heard that term, okay? And so if you really look at it, there's some truth to that. We've seen some things happen there and that have happened here, there, or what have you. And so I want you all to understand that there are some parallels to that. And when the Lord told me that we're next, we need to understand as the body of Christ that it's no different than what the Lord has been telling me. If you all have followed this ministry, you subscribe to these videos, you know that the Lord has been telling me for the last several years that war is coming to our shores. In fact, there was a video I put out a few years ago, it was before COVID, and I got a lot of slack for this video. It's still out there. It was talking about the dragon being released, and I talk about, it was like it was a short video, short for Mena is what I talk about, because my videos be kind of long. Where I was talking about, the Lord said that the dragon for war had been released, and I had to specify that even though the dragon typically represents China, that it wasn't specified to China, but that it was the same spirit, a principality that had caused World War I and World War II, and that this had been released upon the world. Now, you'll see that at the bottom of the screen if you want to go back and check that out. He gave that to me. Furthermore, going into archives and things of the Watchman on the Wall and things that God has given me over the years, like 2017, 2018, 2019, where I have seen things like the alliance between Turkey and Russia before it happened. Those things are up there. You'll see that at the bottom of the screen. What have you. So this year, earlier this year, about January, February, I was in prayer and I asked the Lord, I said, and it was one of my lament moments. I don't have no problem admitting that. Okay. I'm just kind of like, Lord, it's getting rough out here. Can we wrap this up? One of those kind of conversations. But I asked the Lord, like, basically in the sense of how long, how much longer? Because things are getting hard. And it was 1 o'clock in the morning and beginning of this year. And the Lord said to me, he says, I've already told you. And it was a very stern voice. He spoke to me in, like, maybe a reprimanding slightly. I'll even put it there, but it was he spoke to me in a stern tone. And he says, I've already told you, you will see war on your shores before I gather my bride. And I've been talking about that all of 2023. And he has shown it to me. And it's been going back for several years that I've seen war come to the shores of the United States. I've been seeing it since I was a little girl. And that's why the Lord, I know, spoke to me in such a stern tone, because when I began to even see visions and dreams at the age of 7, and my mother didn't even know what was going on. She had no idea, because I didn't tell her for a whole year what I was seeing. I didn't understand it. I was a kid. The first things that the Lord ever showed me as a little girl was things like the rapture, the harpazo, and the tribulation and war coming to America. These are some of the first things. You say, well, that's what you saw at 7. Yes, that's what he began showing me. I didn't see angels and heaven and pearly gates. The Lord started showing me the end times at the age of 7. Why? Because my assignment is for this season. My assignment is to be a mouthpiece in the end times. And so he was preparing me for that from the very beginning. So I'm telling you all this now. I'm going to stop there and open it up to Joanie, but we're going to loop back around, because the main purpose of this video, and again, we're going to try not to overwhelm you all. And again, I need you all to understand that this is not to instill fear. But there's too many in the church who are asleep. There's too many in the church who have lamps with no oil. There's too many of us in the church that are completely oblivious to the season, and there are too many in the church who do not want the return of Christ to happen. And if we don't wake up, it will very well cost you your life in a very short time frame. I'm going to give you that time frame, and then I'm going to turn it over to Joanie. The time frame that has been given is 14 months. In the next 14 months, we are going to see some very horrendous and horrific things across the planet, okay? But we're going to see it and experience it here in the United States, okay? We have everything from solar eclipses coming across this country. We have one this upcoming weekend, in fact, and a major one in April of next year, right before Passover. And these are the signs. These are the moedim, the moed that the Lord put in season. He already wrote this stuff out. as signs, omens, okay, appointed times for us to pay attention so that we will not be caught off guard. Paul said he would not have us ignorant, and yet so many of us are ignorant because we have built our treasures in this world and in this life, and we have not focused on the next life. So, Joanie, I'm going to turn that over to you on that note.
Yes. Okay, so I would like to begin with the red. Okay, because that's the first thing you said. Joanie will make a mention on that. Like you were saying, there's two. Actually, there's three factions of. Well, there's two really of Islam. You have the Sunni, the Saudis, and you have the Shiite, and that is more. They're more radical. Okay, but then you have your terrorist groups. They are violent extremists. Okay. Now, these violent extremists have mullahs and they have clerics. And those would be like their, if you would want to use the word priesthood. And so sometimes they'll wear maybe a red sash or they will wear red. But those are the ones who are the head over the extremist group, the extremist group that is spread all over, the Hezbollah, Hamas. So with that being said, it is absolutely important to know exactly where we are right now, because this is at 1995 and 2000. We're talking about the here and now. And I say this with absolute humility of heart to everybody, because I don't make myself anything. I'm just a humble servant of the Lord. Okay. But there's some things we need to look at, because what you dreamed of, I'm going to add this. And I thought about this yesterday. I said, wait a minute. We had spoken about this earlier. I said, hey, this just came to my mind. And there was a president of Iran. And this was many years ago. I even forget the date, but it was probably about 15 years ago or so. His name was Mahmoud. What was his last name?
Ahmadinejad, yes.
Thank you. Ahmadinejad. And everybody was very concerned about him because he wasn't a terrorist, but he was pro that, but he'd never say he was. But what everybody was nervous about is he wasn't your regular Iranian president. He was religious. And I have not heard anybody talk about this at all. I'm not saying maybe there are. I haven't heard, and I pretty much had my finger on the pulse of everything that's been happening. I barely have slept because I want to know what's going on as a watchman. And same with you. Same with many that are watching. Watchmen, stay awake. But do you remember, and I'm saying this really outwardly because I know you remember. So during that time, we were learning about why all of a sudden there was so much extremism, because it really did come on that scene right around that time. Like, what is up with all this violent extremism? And his belief in that extremism is that they believe their belief is that they wanted to bring in the 12th Imam, or the Mahdi, or the Mehdi. There's different ways you can say it, but we'll just say Mahdi, and that he is their answer. Like ours is Jesus Christ. We're waiting for Jesus Christ in the second coming to bring about his kingdom, his 1,000-year millennial reign of righteousness. That is their answer. That's their man. And they're expecting him to come, that he will rule the entire world, that all faiths, all people who will not come under the banner of Islam will be killed. They will be killed. So his rhetoric was, and it's not rhetoric, they believe with much bloodshed, it will hasten the return of that 12th Imam. Now, that didn't work out back then. It kind of blew up for a little while, and then it just kind of went, There was little things along the way. Now here we are. We are here right now, and on the 7th, Israel was attacked suddenly. I don't really believe it was super sudden. Obviously, it's obviously Iranian backed. Persians have been in the picture for a long time, but it was an ultra sophisticated breach. And there were some things that don't add up. And we could talk about that in just a few minutes. And so I'm talking about timing here, because that didn't work out. Like, they wanted bloodshed. Remember, they were blowing up. There was 9/11. There was all these things, right? But that man didn't come. Now, there's an understanding where people believe that, or a teaching rather, that the Antichrist will be Middle Eastern. Now, I don't believe that he'll be Middle Eastern, because the Antichrist has got to answer to Jewish genealogy. We're not going to get into that. I'm just saying there's two people here. There's two individuals here. So we're looking for Christ to come to bring about 1,000 years of peace. And they're looking for their 12th Imam to bring about peace, but it must be brought on by a lot of bloodshed. Now, that belief didn't end around that era of 9/11 and the other terrorist actions. They believe it today. But we have to look at the timing of what they're doing, because I fully believe that that has a lot to do with it, because Iran is still with that. They believe that they want him to come on the scene. I believe that has something to do. I believe it has a lot, probably, perhaps everything to do with all the bloodshed, because we're seeing so much bloodshed, because they want to bring about their 12th Imam. So we're looking at Israel right now, and the focus is this, and this has been my concern. I've had people, I put a video out on something, and it was about something about the Holocaust and something, and it was the day before that happened with Israel. And I had people that had written to me, and they were trying to correct me and rebuke me and everything, which doesn't work, saying, I need to be schooled who the real Jews are. And these are people that call themselves Christians. You need to know who the real Jews are. You don't know who they are. They're Khazarian and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't want to listen to any of that garbage. I'm not going to listen to it. I've learned all about it till I was blue in the gills. And, I thought to myself, I mean, I deleted it all because I don't put up with it. But I lay in bed thinking about all these corrections that were trying to be done. I was being rebuked. You need to be correct. You're in serious error. I say, no, you are in serious error. So don't bother sending any of that to me. I won't even look at it. And I thought to myself, what is the so-called Christian community become? Okay, because we're looking at human beings being slaughtered. Okay, we're looking at the most atrocious, devastating, horrific images in Israel of men, women, and children. We're hearing what they're doing, their actions that they're doing, and it's too graphic and too gruesome and horrific to speak about here. Everybody knows it, and they've been seeing it already. But it really is extremely, severely troubling to me that anybody can say, well, those are not the real Jews. What difference does it make? These are human beings, just like everybody else, men, women, and children. All of a sudden, bam, their lives are disrupted, okay? And they're being killed. There's people that are hostages and so forth and so on. Again, we're not going to get into the full details of every little detail that's happening there, but we have to understand something right now. We have to remember, as the true body of Jesus Christ, He knows all about this. He saw it coming. And I believe with all my heart, because it was even the day before that happened, or a couple days before that happened, there was things brewing. And I was reading my Bible, and I heard clearly in my heart, we have entered into Jacob's trouble. So I'll turn it over to you, and you could.
Yeah, there's actually here's the thing. Several of the people that I've talked to, friends of mine who are in ministry, some have been in ministry longer than me, like way longer than me. They also had an unctioning. One of my good friends, who we both know, for a week prior, she felt such a heaviness in her spirit, and she reached out to me. She said, Mena, something is about to happen. And she understood that, okay, we're turning this leaf in the season. We had just done our High Holy Days conference on the 16th of September. So almost a month ago, almost 4 weeks ago now. And even so for Faithful Walk Healing Ministries, our semi-annual conferences are on the lines of the feast, on the lines of the feast that we have, or that is mentioned in Deuteronomy 16:16 and Leviticus chapter 23. So our High Holy Days conference, Fall Feast conference, is typically our most, our biggest one of the year, or what have you. It would have been just as usual, business as usual, so to speak. But this one was different. There was a shift, and I kept telling our group, our ministry group, and my staff members, I said, this is going to be different. There's a shift happening in the spirit. I'm like, we're getting ready to enter into something. And I kept telling my staff members, I kept telling my group, and the Lord had unctioned me to do a major prophecy update, which is something I never do after these meetings, okay? But he had me to gather things together that he had spoken to me this year, and also gathering some current events, and to speak to the people that came there, to talk to them, Joanie, about preparing for entering into this new season. And I opened up with, we have entered into a new season. It is a season of sorrows. Now, that was on September 16th. Ironically, this Saturday, now, again, this has all happened before Israel and the situation in the Middle East. He unctioned me to, because a lot of people, we sold out of tickets, and which was easy because we don't sell anything, but people have to register, and people were just like, we can't come, blah blah blah. They said, so we did another one. We set up another one, which we're having this Saturday coming up, the 14th, in Florida, in Lake Mary, Florida. And this has nothing to do with the High Holy Days, of course, it's over, but specifically specifying an end of the age prophecy conference. Again, things that we haven't done before. Now, I've done Watchmen on the Walls. You've been on some of my Watchmen on the Walls. I've done some Watchmen on the Wall updates, prophecy updates after our Bible studies that we have online on Thursdays, or what have you, but nothing like this. But this was unction because the Lord was really pressing, the people need to get ready. Now, you were talking about Iran and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, which had been around since, I believe, 99, something like the early 2000s. He really started talking about him being anointed. That was the term he used, because I followed this like hardcore up until 10 years ago. So it was less than that. It was 10. He was around for the entire Obama administration. He was around for Bush's term as well. George W. That's really George W. And then he was around for the entire Obama administration, but it was during the Obama administration that he said he had been anointed to usher in the Mahdi, or the 12th Imam, which is their Messiah, which is the Antichrist, okay? Or it is, who, whether, it don't matter where he come from, which direction of the sun he come from, it's still the Antichrist, whether he's Jew or Muslim or whatever, okay? And so then, yes, we go into, we talk about 9/11, which was over 20 years ago. We're talking, 22 years ago since 9/11. Yeah, but let's not even go back that far. Let's talk about 2012. Let's go back to 2012, okay? And we're not gonna go through everything, but Joanie. So from 2012 on, we have a shift happening in the world. Obama's doing his second term. Really quick rundown, just so every one of our listeners can understand how this is well played, because this is going to play all the way up to what just happened this past weekend. And I'm going to give you a timeless, because I keep track of history and I keep track of world events. We need to know these things so that we are not caught off guard, okay? 2012, second administration or second term for the Obama administration. What happens during that time? We had Benghazi, the whole situation in Libya. Now, I went on to talk about Clinton and Hillary Clinton and all that. Let's talk about facts. The facts is that Obama was warned not to go in and mess with Gaddafi. Gaddafi is one of our brothers. Our brothers. You know this man has a Muslim background, okay? And so let me stop clapping. Let me quit clapping because that's ghetto. Sorry, y'all, I'm letting my colors show out. But, you know, this man is what he goes in and orders Gaddafi to be killed. But we had Benghazi, which is in Libya. Libya's pretty much government still ain't been the same ever since, okay? So we have that happens, but also during that time, it was the whole, I forgot to turn my mic off situation. They call it the hot mics. And he was sitting across from the ambassador for Russia. And he's telling him, he says, tell Putin to be patient. Wait until I get my second term, and then I'll have more flexibility. Well, what happened? He pays Ukraine to send their enriched uranium. He pays them so many billions of dollars to send their enriched uranium to Russia. Why? So they're left defenseless. Okay, 10 years after that happens, what happened? 10 years after that, or not 10 years, a year after that, in 2013, what happens? They invade Crimea and they take over. So this man gave Ukraine to Russia 10 years prior to the war that started last year in 2012. In addition to that, we also want to name something too that happened when Ahmadinejad was still in office, the whole Ukraine deal. The Obama administration, not Ukraine, excuse me, Iran. The Obama administration started the whole nuclear deal for Iran. And so now there's another thing, okay? So fast forward, so a lot of stuff happened between 2012 and 2013, a lot. There was a major shift across the planet, across the Middle East, even across the Vatican, happened between 2012 and 2013 that ushered into where we're at now. So fast forward to where we're at now. Now, we can mention the fact that, yes, Russia has invaded Ukraine. That was it. Listen, the whole Ukraine thing is a political stunt because, again, it was already given to Russia 10 years prior. Now here we are a year after that, and now we're dealing with this situation with Iran. So what happens? So Obama administration gives Iran a nuclear deal, sends cash into there. Trump comes into office and he revokes it. Okay, Biden gets into office and he reinstates it. He reinstates it, and just what, last month, he sends $6 billion to Iran. Okay, so here we are. So in other words, this is nothing new. This stuff, what we talk about, this stuff has already been set, and they just press play, if that makes sense. They just press play. That's it. These things have already been set up. Now, we can say from a bigger picture, Joanie, you and I have talked about it, you know, the famous evangelical charismatic statement, God is in control. Yes, he is. It is true. He created everything. He's Alpha, Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and last. I like to add in Hebrew, the Aleph and the Tav, right? He's everything. So it is. I always said, in the beginning, God created the beginning and the end, and he pressed play. That's what I like to say. So we're playing out, we're on track 12 of the CD player. And once you burn a CD, you can't rewrite it, okay? So we're on track 12 and we're playing it through, true enough. But even when you come down on a carnal level, okay, on an earthly level, on a human level, there are powers at play. And remember, Paul talks about those powers in Ephesians chapter 6. They are, and these are not good powers, people. These are powers of darkness. There are powers at play who too have already set up certain things. okay? And it is playing out accordingly. Now, going back to Israel, and this situation with Israel. Now, I know some of you all are going to find it hard to swallow me saying this, Lord is saying this is Psalm 83, or Joanie saying, and again, this is what it is the beginning of what will be Jacob's trouble. Jacob's trouble is what is titled in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, we call it the tribulation, the great tribulation, some of you even call it, or what have you, because we know that, or the wrath is the other term for it. We know that the entire great tribulation is revolved around the Middle East, specifically Israel, or I'll even specify more, Jerusalem, okay? And so these are end time events that we can't pray away, we can't fast away, we can't hope away, because these things have already been written. What I want you all to understand, because I told to Joanie about this, and Joanie, I want you to come in time on this. We were talking about, and I was talking to my husband about this too, because when everything started playing out with Israel, I was like, you go on social media and you see this all, you know, the evangelicals, you know, I stand with Israel, I stand with Israel. Everybody's changing their profile pictures, everybody's posting the same thing, blah, blah, blah. But evangelicals have very little understanding, most of them have very little understanding what has even transpired. This is not just another, oh, God's going to defend Israel. Yes, the land belongs to God. There is a covenant that Elohim made with Abraham in Genesis and his descendants. And that covenant has not been replaced. There's no replacement theology here, people. Okay? It is not broken. It is, you know, God has stood on that covenant for the descendants of Abraham. And we can go even further and say, according to Romans chapter 11, those who come into Christ, we are grafted in on top of that. So the same inheritance that was promised to Abraham and his descendants and blessing his seed is also promised to those who also come into Christ, into Mashiach. And so that as a whole, so that stands no matter what. It's a general statement is what I'm saying. We got to look at this a little bit deeper, because yes, God's, you know, of course, Israel will not be obliviated. They will not be, you know, scattered to the four corners ever again. Jerusalem will not be completely destroyed. Let me put that, because partially destroyed, yes. We even find that in the book of Revelation, okay? And we also know that the Antichrist sets up shop in Jerusalem. So we already know that, but we got to look at this for what it is in the season, and look at it on a God's timetable, not your timetable of all the charts that everybody and their grandmothers have been talking about for the last 50 years. I've been saying to Joanie, and I have been saying this to our group of Faithful Walk Healing Ministries for the last couple of years. And Joanie and I have gone back and forth. And here's the deal. Joanie and I, we don't see everything eye to eye. We don't agree on every single little detail. That has mature Christians can understand that, okay? Petty Christians don't. But the one thing we have talked about, and I've shared this with her, and I said, the thing that is the most frightening, Joanie, and I've said this, I said, has any of the evangelicals stopped and asked themselves, what if what I've been taught is wrong? And no one stops and asks themselves that. We're going based off of what everybody else is saying and not what the Ruach HaKodesh is saying. You understand what I'm saying when I say that? And so when people say things, and I'm just, you know, oh, well, I'm just giving an example. Well, we're not in the seals. I hear pastors say, well, we're not in the seals aren't broken, this, that, because the tribulation, blah, 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 whatever, over the rapture, blah, 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 blah. And you know what? And I want to ask them, says who? Who told you that? Who told you that? Is this just because you sat down with a couple of people and your homies, y'all sat in the basement and y'all decided to come out with a biblical timeline? I mean, that's great, but you have to understand it's still man's knowledge. And man's knowledge will always lead him to the tree of knowledge. It is always limited. And there are mysteries of God that we have no idea about. There are things that Daniel saw that he was not allowed to speak about. There were things that John heard that he was not allowed to write about. Understand? Nobody knows everything. Paul clarified that. He said, we see in part. And so what we're not doing is we're going based off of what grandma said. We're going based off of what this book said and that DVD said and what this pastor, well, he's a Bible scholar and he or she might be a great Bible scholar, but they're not God. And that's the part that is leading us down a path of ignorance that is going to cause us not to be prepared, or more, I should say, we're going to be caught off guard when these things come to play and we're not ready. Like me and Joanie have sat here and discussed over the last few days, we absolutely agree with each other on this one fact, that what is happening in the Middle East, and Benjamin Netanyahu has said multiple times in the last several days, that when he is done, he will rewrite the map of the Middle East. He has also continuously reiterated that this war will last at least months, okay? This isn't a few days or a few weeks. This is a large-scale situation that is happening, that is continuously, as the days go by, involving more and more countries. Now, we talked about Iran, but we also know that Lebanon is now involved. We also know that Turkey has threatened to get involved. We also know that the British and the United States and Greece has also sent in troops or fighter planes and jets and ships. And this is World War III. So it's the beginning of World War III. And here's the deal. Because so many, and they're trying to negotiate, I'll add to, with Egypt, trying to let the people in with Egypt, and Egypt's trying to stay out of it, but I don't know for how long Egypt is going to stay out of it, and Syria is sitting on the back burner, because we have to remember that Assad is still in existence, and he is very close friends with Russia. What me and Joanie absolutely agree on is that this thing is so big, and it's steady growing by the day, that it will lead to the peace treaty. It will have to lead to the peace treaty, because I don't personally see, and Joanie, you come in and chime in, I don't personally see Netanyahu just saying, okay, I'm done, we're done. He actually has stated, even when Hamas supposedly said, we'll talk about a ceasefire, he's like, yeah, no, it's too late. We gonna wipe you out, it's done. I don't see him just saying, okay, we're done, let's go home and eat our sandwiches. Somebody's gonna have to intervene, because already not even a whole week, and we've got multiple countries involved in this situation already. Joanie?
Well, these are high stakes. They're high stakes. They're high stakes, earthly speaking, if you don't have a biblical view. But we are those that have a biblical view. I just want to inject this. The thing that these are multitudes of Christians that say this, that those are not the real Jews, and that Christians are the real Jews. And so there is this shattered, what do you call it, landscape of basement believing, as you said. If they get together and they go, well, I think this is true, I think this is true. And never before have we ever seen everybody, like, that scripture, it says, for no prophecy is of any private interpretation, right? But we can say that, well, the Bible has become nothing but private interpretation in these last days. So who has the truth? And I even say to many people, I have certain scholars I look to, but they've been from long ago, and they didn't have the full light, okay? And they're wrong, but that's what they conjectured, and that's what they could see from a distant view. It says in Proverbs 4:18, the path of the righteous is as the shining light, which is sunrise, rises slow, shining more and more into the perfect day. The perfect day is eternity. We are eternity minded people. We are in this world, we're not of this world. And those of us who have been a long time, I do believe there is an expectation from God, from Jesus Christ, for us to know the times and the seasons that God has put in his own power. Paul the Apostle says in chapter 5 of First Thessalonians, but of the times and seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write these things again unto you, for ye yourselves know that the Lord cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say, right? So there's a division, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Now, what also I see happened is the normalization that they were trying to bring about in the last couple of years in the Middle East. The Israeli government became so liberal, so divided, so liberal that many of the people did become, I mean, for years it became an extremely liberal playground. And so I believe also this is happening, and some people may not agree with it. I have a friend who is a core total Jewish. I'm a Jew. I'm a Bible believing Jew. I'm a born again Jew. She's a born again Jew. She's living up in, I believe, somewhere in northern Jerusalem, northern Israel. And her own words were Joanie, and she's part of the underground church there. She's a real deal. And I asked her, how are you doing? How can I pray for you? Obviously, I'm praying for you. And she said, Joanie, I believe, and she's lived there since 1980, that the people have become so liberal, so, you know, what are the words I'm trying to find? That God, I'll leave it at that they're so far away from God, so far away, that in this Jacob's trouble, I'm injecting that. She didn't say that, but I'm saying in this war that's happening, she says, I believe God knows, obviously knows all about it. He has allowed it to happen, and it's going to wake the Jews up again. This, because the 7-year period, or the 70th week of Daniel, is the judgment of the Jewish nation. That's what it is. And the devastating, very sad, unfortunate fact is, if anybody is a studier of prophecy, well, you're going to read in many places, is Isaiah chapter 24 is one of them. Chapter 24 is going to now come to pass. That one whole chapter, all of us have read chapter 24. Ooh, look at what's happening here. And we haven't seen that happening because it hasn't happened. And so everybody revert back to Isaiah 24, read it, and expect every one of those things to pass. And he tells the readers through Isaiah, God speaks through Isaiah, and lets all the readers know for all time, and that means to us, to this modern day, what that is going to look like. Okay, we know in the book of Revelation, we're reading about Israel. The whole thing is about Israel, and really, when it comes down to it, the whole entire thing is about Israel. You see, the Bible has become American centric for a very long time. So there's replacement theology. So what replacement theology, in case some of you do not know, it's taking, see, there's covenants that God has only made. There's 8 covenants that are, some of them have been fulfilled, but there's covenants that still stand, and they're exclusively Jewish. Okay, they're exclusively house of Israel. We're in a pocket of time in this 2,000 years that Christ has gone to be in heaven, where there is no Jew nor Gentile, meaning Jesus Christ died, Ephesians chapter 2, breaking down the middle wall of partition. Therefore, by his blood, making one new man, a new race of people. So yes, there are still Jews, there are still Italians, there are still Germans, there are still Americans. And because it says that every tribe, nation, language, tongue, all of that is coming in. Okay. So, but see, what has happened is this replacement theology of taking all the promises that are millennial promises that are covenanted with the Jews for the future. And so they've taken it upon themselves now. And that's where you get these big NAR communities, and they're saying, oh, I'm the prophet of the nations, and they're taking words of Isaiah and they're making it their own. And and they've created this whole it's a catastrophe to me. And so if you do not know where you
Apostate is what it is, just to interject. Most of it is apostate. Because in the process of, the NAR, and I would just, in case y'all don't know, that's an acronym, the New Apostolic Reformation Church, which is all about the 7 mountains. And basically it's a now movement, okay? It's, we can bring down the gates of courts of heaven and we can establish heaven on earth and all of this stuff, which is not even biblical, okay? It's not written anywhere, and what it is it's apostate. And I have said this before, and it's not popular when I say it. People feel some type of way. They get in their feelings when I say it, but I will stand on it. The majority of the evangelical church in the West is apostate, and that's the end of the story. Because they're not teaching nor prepping anyone for the return of the Lord. The return of the Lord as in his bride, okay? They're not being, that's why when Jesus talks about, there's 7 churches in the book of Revelation that are mentioned between chapters 1 and 2, or actually 2 and 3, excuse me. Between chapters 2 and 3, there's 7 churches. And 7 churches were 7 physical places, as we know, that were in Asia Minor, that's in modern day Turkey now. Now we don't talk about that. That was the physical past historical context. There are also many Bible scholars, people who study eschatology and evangelicals, who believe that the 7 churches represent 7 church errors. But one of the things the Lord gave me several years ago when I last taught the book of Revelation, I think it was about 2019, was that it also represents 7 types of Christians, 7 types of believers, okay? And of the 7 types, or the 7 churches, there were only 2 that he did not have an ought with, right? And one, Philadelphia, was what? The remnant church. It was a remnant church, a small church who had persevered through persecution, through being small, through all the things that they'd gone through. But it was a remnant, a very small group of people who had stayed faithful, stayed dedicated, stayed righteous to God, no matter what was thrown at them. And because of that, there was a promise given to them. And that was they would be kept from the hour of testing that would come upon the whole world, is what it says in that scripture. That is a promise of a hapazo. Now, some people want to teach that's a promise of, we're going to just hide ourselves under underground bunkers. But like we know, Paul stated he has not appointed us to wrath, okay? But there is a second group, and that is the church of Smyrna. And the church of Smyrna, they go through. He says, some of you, the devil will come and visit. He says, Satan will come visit you, and some of you will be thrown into prison 10 days. But this is what he tells them. He said, but stay faithful even unto death, and I will give you a crown of life. So there were those who were going to go through. Okay, do you understand what I'm saying? Go through the persecution, go through the tribulation, and they will be refined. Okay, so to speak, some people call it that. But he says, stay faithful even unto death, and I will give you a crown of life. So 2 types of people. It's either one or the other, and that's it. But everything outside of that is people who have lost their first love, people who have the reputation of being alive but are dead, people who say we have everything because we are rich and we're poor, miserable, wretched, and naked before God. We have those who have brought Jezebel and sexual immorality into the midst of them. And we could go on and on and on. So that is a representation of most of the evangelical churches today. And this is the reason why, listen, Joanie, it's so bad. It's so bad in America. We have pastors, packed out churches. I'm talking 2,000-3,000 members. Pastors are on this stage with vibrators. I kid you not. We just recently saw this, me and my husband, using it as props to talk about that. We have pastors talking about it's okay to have sex outside of marriage. We have pastors that are endorsing the sale of cannabis. We have pastors apologizing to the gay community for saying that homosexuality is a sin. And we could go on and on and on top of the fact that the churches are racist, they are segregated, they're political when we shouldn't have politics in the church. Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. If it was of this world, my followers would have fought to save me. It's what he told Pontius Pilate. We have so much corruption in the church, but However, Paul told us, Thessalonians, he said when he was talking about the people that Christ had come, he said the day of the Lord would not come unless what? The apostasy, the great falling away, the falling away from what? The truth. So that means you had to know the truth to fall away from it. Okay, this isn't people just walking out of the church, even though we've got that too. But this isn't people just saying, okay, to heck with Christianity, I'm going to go, smoke pot and bow down to Buddha. It's not even that. It's deeper than people are sitting in these buildings they call assemblies of God, but they're the assemblies of the little God, okay? And they have fallen away from the whole truth, the truth. What did Jesus say? I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? And so if he says, I am the way, the truth, and life, that's what Jesus, Mashiach, Yeshua said to us. And he says that the apostasy is the falling away from the truth. What does that mean? That they have turned their faces away from the Son of God. They stopped preaching the cross. And they started being self-serviced, self-ambitious. Do you understand what I'm saying? Self-righteous. It's all about me. Living my best life now, building my treasures now, name it and claim it, and whatever else. And this is what's causing all these people to fall away. And so when things like what has happened in the last weekend transpire, evangelicals have no clue. They're just putting out their, Israeli flags and say, I stand with Israel. Hope Joanie, what will happen hypothetically? It's just a hypothetical statement. Oh, but what happens if in 6 months or 8 months or 12 months from now, they pull out that peace treaty and the Christians are still sitting here? I wonder what they're going to feel about that, especially the ones who have continuously thought that nothing's going to happen until the apostle. I feel like they should have gave that up after COVID. Now, I'm not saying that we are anti-harpazo. I absolutely believe in the catching away. There's multiple scriptures that confirm that. First of all, there are multiple raptures, as we use that word, though we know it's not in the King James Version, okay? But there are multiple harpazos throughout the Bible, starting with Enoch. So to say that there is not one is foolish, because there's too much hardcore evidence that states that there have been one, there will be one, if not maybe a couple even. And that's another conversation for another day. That's not what I'm saying. But the mentality that, oh, we're all just going to go up yonder, and we don't have to worry. Like, again, I said they should have dealt away with that 3 years ago. So if you're still on that, then you're going to be in for a rude awakening.
I want to add something. You said, where are they going to be when there will be a peace treaty? I'll tell you where they're going to be. You see, people love this world. They love the world, okay? And so they will look at it like many, well, I'll start this part. They will look at it and say, well, I don't see that as being the peace that's from the enemy. And I think God wants peace, and they'll misappropriate scriptures. Well, doesn't the angel say peace on earth and goodwill toward men? But doesn't Jesus say, I did not come to bring peace, I came with the sword, right? So they misappropriate the words, and they don't know where they're at in biblical sequential movement, because God is moving right now. Amen. God is totally moving and in absolute control of this. I want to share a brief dream I had, and it was in 2020. You know all about this dream. And I was like, what in the world? But it was so profound. So it's pretty quick, and here's how it went. I saw myself, I'm hovering over Israel. I'm in the atmosphere somewhere, and someone's with me on my right side. I can't really see, but I know there is some representative from heaven with me. Whether it's an angel, I don't know. That's not the part I want to even talk about. But I know I'm hovering over Israel. I can see the entire state. In fact, I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, that is Israel. And even though I was so high up, and I believe looking back now that I was that high up so I could see everything, And so, though I was so high up, I can see up close, just like I can see you up close right now, or this keyboard, I can see every detail of it. Okay. And so when you're given a dream in the spirit, you're able to see things in the spirit, because we have to see in our spirit, because we can't take that, we can't do that while we're awake. And so I see along the entire eastern border, not the west where the Golan is happening, or the Gaza, right? The Gaza, but it's along the eastern border. And I'm looking and I see state of the art tanks. Now, I'm no military armament expert. I'm not military expert on anything. I mean, I do know some things. I'm not completely dumb, but I was able, because I know I live right near a military base, a Marine base. I know what the tanks look like. I have a husband, I have a son. They show me pictures. I'm not dumb. So in my dream, plus you know things, okay?
Mhm.
So I'm looking at all of these tanks and I'm thinking those are not your average tanks. And so as I said, was thinking that in my mind, I was able to, like, all of a sudden I'm zooming in, like I'm able to see details of these tanks. In my mind, I said, what kind of tanks are those? Those are like some kind of state of the art, high tech tanks. Nothing that I've ever seen before. And I was noticing details about it. And I couldn't tell you because I don't have a tech background. As I'm looking at it, and they're all facing toward the east, and they have these cannons, right? They have cannons, and all the cannons are pointing to the east. At that moment, I looked above us, me, I'll say me. I looked above me because there was these thick clouds above me. And I saw arms. You know, when you're pulling an arrow, you see two arms, right? You see one holding one part of the arrow and another one holding a string back. I see first this big arm, this big, powerful, mighty arm come out of the clouds. Then I see another hand and there's an arrow, a bow and arrow. And I see these arms and there's powerful, strong arms and with a string pulled back as far as they can go. And it was aiming down where those cannons were facing. So that bow and arrow was not upon those armament of Israel, but
Mhm.
upon, it was ready to be pulled. It was pulled back. It was
Mhm.
already pulled back. And that arrow pointing to what was coming. And I woke up. And so the Holy Spirit, He will give us dreams because it's for prayer. He has to show us things in advance, so when they come, they come to mind. See, but the Lord was saying, I didn't know what that was about. I mean, that was 2020. I mean, COVID really didn't even start. In fact, no, I think no, that was 2020. COVID didn't even start. And I was like, I had this dream. I don't know what it is, but once you have a dream from him, you don't forget it.
Right.
But now, fast forward, he's already saying, look, it's a give me. He's going to defend Israel. So,
Yes.
everybody's, and I understand everybody's emotional. We're all emotional over this because we love Israel. We love the Jews. I'm a Jew. You have Jewish blood in you. There's many Jews that are watching. We love the Jewish people. There's such a sadness of me, inside of me, that the Jews don't realize how absolutely much we love them. But see, God showed me that He will defend. And look, there is a place in the Word, I don't have it in front of me, where God was judging Israel. It was, I believe it was in Chronicles, and He says to them, "I'm going to punish you. I'm going to judge you. I'm going to have you go into captivity for a while, but I'm not going to wholly leave you unpunished. I'm going to reserve a part. I'm not going to he goes, I'm not going to fully destroy." He said, because I remember the covenant. I'm going to remember the covenant I made with David. See, there's a Davidic covenant. And if he says, and even in Psalm 107, and it's a whole thing where it starts off in Egypt. Great things did he in the presence of your fathers, wonders, miracles in the presence of your fathers in the field of Zoan in Egypt. And so the whole thing is a course of, they're sinning against God, then they remember that God was their savior, then they call upon him and they come again. The
Mhm.
whole thing
Yep.
is like that.
Yep.
until the very, very end. It said, though they forgot God. See, that entire chapter is, I call it, I have it written down there, forgetting God. See, the entire thing of Psalm 107 is very important because it says they forgot God, their Savior, who did wonderful things, marvelous things for them. And so, and it got so bad, they were sacrificing their children to Moloch, so it became evil. But at the very end of that, he says, though they forgot him, yet because they cried unto him, he remembered for them his covenant unto them. You see, this is going to be this is the beginning of Jacob's trouble, the 70th week of Daniel, and they have to go through it. But see, they're going to become chief of nations in the millennial kingdom. They
That's
become
right.
the chief of nations. And Jerusalem becomes the premier capital of the whole world. Isaiah chapter 2,
That's right.
beautiful for situation. Psalm 48, beautiful for situation on the sides of the north, the city of the great king. That's not a heaven picture. That is a millennial passage. And so when we realize that we are absolutely on target, we are on time, God is on time. He absolutely knows what he's doing. He tells us, he makes it known. He says, I make known the end from the beginning. And he tells us that. So he realizes everything in between, cover to cover. He's got it all in control. And you were talking about, we're entering into a new season. We have to enter it into a new season, even if you don't want to enter into a new season. If you don't like to enter into, you're going to be pushed into it. And there's going to be people that will fall out they're going to fall out to the spirit of this world. They're going to be, it's too hard. Now, I'm not that judge. I'm not their judge to say, well, look what they're doing. I'm just saying that is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because there's going to have to be an allegiance people are going to have to make with Jesus
Right.
Christ, where it's real. It's not enough to be saying, well, I'm a Christian. It's not enough. And the false doctrines and all these things everybody are arguing about. The Lord, I believe with all my heart, this is just off the top of my head right now, and from my heart, the Lord has a plan. And he's all this bickering down here. Well, that's not what I believe. That's not how I read it. And I believe this is going to happen. The Lord, look, he is beyond our understanding.
Right.
He is beyond anything. We can't, how little is known of him, Job says. We are not those of us who go, well, I think God thinks this. It's like, who can know the mind of the Lord that he may instruct him, and who has been his counselor? It even says, once the Lord has spoken, who can let it? It even says of himself, I am not a man that I should lie, neither the son of man that I should lie. He says, once I have spoken, he said, nothing is going to stop me. And just like nothing can stop Jesus from going to that cross, and nothing is going to stop that 7-year period, Daniel's 70th week, God's going to pull those people through. He is going to defend Israel for his name's sake. And this is a Middle Eastern centric gospel.
That's right.
And now, right now, there is a 2,000-year period since Christ is gone that people are being born again. Okay. Look, it says in Hosea 6:2, after 2 days, he will revive us. But on the third day, he will raise us up and we shall live in his sight. So what is that third day? That third day is and then that's the third day refers to his second coming. And then because we are in administrations of time, and there's 8 administrations of time, and we are at the end of the 6th administration of time. It is an age, in each 1,000 years is an age. This is a dual age. This is the age of man / Antichrist. And so when we go into that 1,000-year millennial reign, he's going to sit on that throne. See, Jesus is coming back again. And so he's coming back with a judicial sweeping out of Satan's power. This is what Jacob's trouble is about. It's not like, oh, look at this. And they will, and unfortunately, everybody who's caught in the snare is going to go through the same thing that the Jews are going to, because Jesus said it in Luke chapter 21:36. Take heed unto thyself. that your hearts be not overcharged with surfeiting, meaning overeating, with drunkenness, and with the cares of this life. For as he says, for that day, he says, it'll come upon you. You're not going to
As a
expect.
thief.
He says, as a snare, and a snare is a death trap. So if you miss that rapture, you are caught in that death trap, and so you're going to be in it. Okay, so this is the time that we're living in. And so what Jesus, he has a determination. He said, even, and I believe at Zephaniah, the very last verse, he says, be patient and wait, for my determination is to gather all the nations together, and he's going to judge them. He's going to rule. See, he's coming back to rule and reign, and nothing is going to stop him. No doctrine, no belief. Well, I don't believe those are the real Jews. That is just doesn't even, I mean, that to me is like, I don't.
Can I interject something on that annoyance? Okay, just please, like, Joanie, like, it's so crazy because you see what color my skin is. Now, I have maternal Jewish roots on maternal side, okay? And most people know that. I mean, even my name is Aramaic. And so the thing is that I get it a lot too, but people are like, yeah, you're the real Jew, what have you. Here's the deal. They were scattered to the four corners of the earth. Okay, and they mix and bred with everybody. When people ask me who are the 144,000 that are mentioned in Revelation chapter 6 or 7, I believe it's 7. Who are they? Where are they? Well, we know that they're male and we know that they're virgins because the Bible specifies that. But what are they? Who's the tribe of this, that, this, and this? And of course Dan is omitted. I said they look like everybody. Do you not think that God was smarter than people? Do you not think that he knew that we were going to become a bunch of racist centric bigots over the centuries? I just have to call it for what it is, okay? Of course he knew. He's smarter than that. So they're going to look like, everyone who's watching this today, you're looking at two women who are two different colors, different age categories, different generations, on the opposite side of the country. May I add, we're on opposite coastlines, right? We both have Jewish blood. There you go. Okay. And so that I just had to add that because it's one of the most corniest and the most annoyingest things that I hear in the church. And it's like, who cares? Because at the end of the day, if you have not called up on the name of the Lord, you will not be saved. So it does not matter. You know what I'm saying? It's that part. And like you said, people saying, well, it's not the religion. So what does that excuse? Does that excuse children being decapitated? Does that excuse, did you hear about the Holocaust survivor that's 90 years old that got kidnapped by Hamas? Can you imagine that? I told the people, because they were like, we have to pray for the Jewish people. We have to pray for Israel. I'm praying for everybody. I have prayed for the Palestinians. I have prayed for Israel. I have prayed for all the surrounding nations. In fact, I want to add this. Several years ago, the Lord, 2016, the Lord came to me in the middle of the night and he showed me a vision. I was not asleep. And he showed me Netanyahu going into Iran and bombing Iran. And it's been some years now. This is what, 7 years ago. And the Lord spoke to me. He said, I want you to begin to pray. And I began to pray. And the first thing that came out of my mouth was I began to pray for Israel. And the Lord stopped me mid-sentence. He said, I don't want you to pray for Israel. He said, pray for my children in Iran. I shared this some years ago. And the Lord told me, he says, begin to pray for the underground church in Iran. And from that point on, I have kept up with the underground church. We both have. We both kept up with it. We've talked about it. Iran, the underground church, Iran is still the fastest growing church in the world. The last I checked, which was about the end of last year, they're at 8 million now people in Iran. Iran's not a big country. That's the majority. And so they're going in to bomb Persia. Okay, it's Bible prophecy, first of all. And his children are there. His children, our brothers and sisters, okay, are in Iran, in the underground church. See, and I'm gonna add something else. And I know we're running out of time, but Joanie, we gotta add this because I want to also add something. Because most of the people that found out about Faithful Walk Healing Ministries or Mena had to do with going back about 8 years ago when I was on True News. One of the things that I shared on one of the couple of times, I think I was on there 2 or 3 times, I can't remember, but it was one of the latter parts of True News. It wasn't the first one, in other words. I think it was the last time I was there. I shared about a dream that was given to me. And I'm not going to go through all the details, but I'm going to tell you exactly what needs to be spoken. Where I told Benjamin Netanyahu in this dream that Israel would be his until the abomination of desolation. Those were my exact words to him. And I shared this on True News. I was being cut off because the person of True News is replacement theology. Okay, so they didn't want me to talk about that. But the Lord gave that to me 8 years ago. That the abomination of, that Netanyahu would be in control of Israel until the abomination of desolation, which that's when the Antichrist rises. May I add, one of my good friends said to me, who when I met her, when we became friends 7 years ago, she was living in Jerusalem. Joanie and I both have friends, connections, and people that have lived, currently live in Israel. Okay, so this is personal for us, just so you know. This is not biased. This is personal for us. And she said, Mena, that literally means that he's going to hand the keys over to him being the Antichrist. Okay? I talk about how my mother met him in 1996, Benjamin Netanyahu. She met him at a private party in 96. Okay? There are several people who are no longer here. In other words, both of these people have gone home to be with the Lord. Both of them were in the prophetic. And in the early 2000s, well, the last one, she passed away in 2013, in the beginning of 2013, so 10 years ago. But the other person I think it was 2007 or 8, they were given prophetic words right before they died. It was so interesting because both of these women were given the same thing right before they were taken home. And they were both told that Benjamin Netanyahu had been anointed to lead Israel into the tribulation. And so even when he got ousted, a year or two, a year ago, what have you, I knew he was coming back because I remember what the Lord had shown me and given me 8 years prior, or now 8 years prior, or what have you. And so this is, again, God is in control. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. They said, well, Benjamin Netanyahu has been anointed. He has been anointed. But let me also add that so was Nebuchadnezzar. Let me also add that so Pharaoh was also chosen. Let me say that, okay? Because Netanyahu is not a Christian. He is not a believer in Mashiach. In fact, he is linked to the elite, all right? Most people don't know this, but he's a 33rd degree Freemason. I tell that to people, they go, oh, yes, he is. Okay, so he's a part of the elite. He's a part of the agenda in the Knesset and all of this. And yes, but you have to understand that Satan, and I'm just saying Satan as a whole, has been allotted his time. People, we are going into the new world order. That is what we're seeing, whether you want to believe it or not. Now, you can be like the days of Noah, and you can hear this, and you can go on about your merry way, and you can eat and drink and be merry until the day that God closes the door on the ark, or in the New Testament, until the day that the door is shut and you found left outside with no lamps and no oil and no light. It's your choice. We're not here to convince you. We're here only to deliver the message, and that's it. I want to end on this last note about the U.S. And it's only just a fraction of what I will be talking about on Saturday, and we do not allow recordings in our meetings, just because those are the instructions of the Lord. Because I'm going to tell you all, there's going to be a time where you're not going to be able to get on social media. The true church in America and other places, we're going to have to go underground. You're going to have to learn to be quiet. You're going to have to learn not to get all your resources off the internet. The internet has been, and somewhat the best, but it's been one of the worst things that has happened to Christianity. Because you got 5,000 different doctrines and 10,000 different voices telling you 20,000 different things. And that's not how the Ruach HaKodesh works. It's one voice, one God, one baptism, one faith. But there's a spirit of confusion that has fallen over the church. Because you know why? Because they won't seek God's face for themselves. They won't listen for his voice. They won't be still long enough to hear the still small voice. But with all of this stuff that's going on in the Middle East that Joanie and I have brought to you today, and there's a lot more. I had the privilege, and Joanie knew this, I was invited to a Zoom call yesterday afternoon with a prominent Israeli news group. And I was going to say it, but then I thought they didn't even want their links to be shared. So maybe I won't say it for the sake of privacy, or I should say more so they won't find out. But I was invited to a Zoom yesterday afternoon. It was 1 o'clock Eastern time. It was 8 o'clock in the evening Israel time. And these were 3 people who all are, well, one was a former editor of this Israeli news outlet. And he was also a minister. To my surprise, 2 of the 3 people, and I told Joanie this, I didn't go in expecting this. I thought I was going in to listen to some secular or maybe even Orthodox Jewish people, but 2 of the 3 were actually Messianic believers. Remember I shared this and I said I wanted to share this piece, Joanie. And not the rabbi, they call him a pastor, rabbi, what have you. He's an older gentleman, very well versed in the scripture. In fact, the people that had come in, there were some secular people that were online, Israelis and other people, they were all over the world, people from Greenland. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever seen anybody from Greenland. It's outside of National Geographic, you know, or what have you. There are people from Greenland, people from the Netherlands, literally people from all over the world in this meeting. There wasn't a whole lot of people, but it was a very good, diverse group of people. And we were allowed to talk, ask questions, communicate, all of this stuff. But here was something that was so interesting. The thing that this gentleman was saying, and all 3 of these people were literally living in Israel. And they were saying, you know, what we were saying, what you were saying, Joanie, that the Lord is allowing this. And they said themselves, Israel has become arrogant. You see, here on the Western side, we practically worship Israel. There are 2 types of evangelicals. There is a small group that's probably where me and you fit in, right? But there's 2 types of evangelicals. They're either the ones that stick with replacement theology, which is what you've been honing in on today in this meeting. Or they're the other people that I deal with, and there's the ones that I've never understood. It's the ones that completely obliviously worship Israel. You know, everything is Israel, 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 and they have no real understanding even about the country or about the people. But like, I was glad to see other Jewish people on this Zoom call yesterday that I was invited to, where he was saying, he says, this is happening to us because we have gotten so far from God. We have become so arrogant. And so he understood that this was a judgment on them. And that God, he chastises those whom he loves. And he was saying, we covet your prayers. Pray for us. He was, again, messianic, pray, and he was emphasizing praying for the salvation even of the Jewish people, because he was a believer in Mashiach. But here's what blew me away. During questions and answers, I raised my hand. Well, you can raise your hand in Zoom. You got this little hand thing, right? You know, and I told them who I was. I introduced myself. And I just had one simple question. And Joanie, I shared this with you, and it grieved me so bad. I said, just in your opinion, and I addressed all 3 of them by name, by their first names, the gentlemen that were there. I said, with all of this that is going on, what, in your opinion, even if you could just guess, where do you feel what is happening and what is transpiring and what will maybe possibly even transpire in the near future? Where do you believe that this fits into Bible prophecy? I just genuinely wanted to know. I didn't go in there trying to, you know, preach, or I don't. I'm typically the person who likes to sit by the emergency exit and stuff like that, you know. That's always me. You would never believe that, as much as I talk and do conferences, that I'm a total introvert. And when I'm in settings like that, I literally sit down by the emergency exit. But I just merely asked them that. And to my dismay, the man who Messianic, well, first of all, the one other Messianic guy, he didn't even want to answer it. He said, I'm going to leave it to the rabbi. I'm going to let him answer. And then the rabbi who had quoted all these beautiful scriptures, who had talked about, pray for Israel, who had talked about believing in Mashiach, who even opened up and closed in a beautiful prayer, acknowledging Yeshua. These are the terms and words and language that he used. Looked at me and said to me, I have no idea. And I called Joanie, and Joanie, remember this, because I was almost lamenting. And I said, Joanie, they are literally at the epicenter of Bible prophecy. They are the epicenter, and they have no clue. He said, I would like to know. He said, I would like to understand what the prophets wrote, and I'm fascinated with that. He said, but I don't know. And so but see, even though that's Israel, this is the majority of the church, period, because he's a believer in Christ. This is the majority. That's not just in Israel. It's over here too in the West. But I'm going to add this, and then we'll close. I put out a post, and I said, because we've entered into the season of sorrows, that's what was given to me. Okay, so I'm not just making this up. This is what was given to me. The season of sorrows has begun. And I said, we need to begin to physically prepare, as well as first spiritually prepare. We need to make sure we have oil in our lamps. That's a relationship, ongoing relationship, Holy Spirit, truth, word, prayer, supplication, repentance in some cases. Some of you all need to forgive and in order to be forgiven, okay? But we also need to physically prepare. Food, toiletries. I put in flashlights, batteries, solar powered, light bulbs. If you can afford a generator, generators are very expensive, but if you can afford one, or you own land, or you own property, if you can invest in one, then get it. And I'm talking about here in the US. And listen, you have to remember that the Lord first showed me a pandemic coming in June of 2016 for 3 straight years. And I kept talking about people stocking up and stocking up and stocking up. You guys, we need to prepare. It's back again, and I'm not talking about just a pandemic, even though there's another one of those coming. But we need to begin to prepare physically as much as we can possibly for hard times here in the US. Keeping a little bit of cash on hand, stocking up on medication if you can. If you can't, then trust God, okay? Because what I've been teaching our group, we operate like the book of Acts. That scripture talks about how they came together and they divided what they had so that no one had a need. That's how we roll at Faithful Walk Healing Ministries, like the first century church. So he will take care of his own. I want to emphasize, he will take care of his bride. But 7 years ago, the Lord gave me a word, and I wrote it down, and I mentioned it in a video. And he said, because America had not repented, disasters will come from the east, war will come from the west, and I will cut off the head. And for years now, I never understood the cutting off of the head part. If we look at the country, we've had a lot of terrible things happen to the East Coast over the last 7 years, specifically with storms and flooding and hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, and snowstorms. We've had a lot of disasters that have happened on the East. I mean, groundbreaking, record-breaking things, okay? But the war is coming from that West end. And when we look to our West, where do we find? We find the Orient, China, and Russia, and other folks, okay? And I told Joanie, I said, for years, I didn't understand this. I have a friend who, and I have, God's allowed me the ability to gain relationships and acquaintances with people over the years of ministry for the sake of knowing what time it is. And I have a friend who has, all I can tell you is security clearance, okay, with the government. He's allowed to sit in on certain meetings, intelligent meetings, security meetings, okay? And he let me know last week that there is a operation, and this is the most that I can share on social media, where our military, heads of military, are being prepared for war. They already know when it's going to happen. Remember, I told you the elite know. They know. And I'll add this, and Joanie, you'll look at me crazy, but don't think that Benjamin Netanyahu didn't know that Hamas was coming in. He did. Okay. Our government knows when we're going to be attacked. And what they're preparing the heads for, training the soldiers, I don't know if they've begun yet, but I know that the soldiers or what have you, we have 5 branches of military. They don't, that I know that they don't know yet. Now, I'm not saying I know everything. This is just what was given to me. For operations in this country to be able to maneuver without any communication because they know an EMP is coming. And the terminology that has been given has to do with it's being called no head. And I told Joanie, I said, it sent chills down my back. And I told my friend, the Lord gave this terminology to me 7 years ago, and I did not know what it meant. But the Lord had been showing me, even in a dream that I had where we had an invasion, and at the top of our building, which represented our country, there was no one in the seat. We had no head. And I didn't know what that meant. Then I said, well, we're not going to have a president. The election's going to be canceled. What does that mean? I didn't know. But, we see in part, right? And sometimes God takes a while to reveal things to us. That's why we should never assume. And listen, I'll raise my hand and say, I learned a hardcore lesson about not assuming what God is saying. Okay, just what he showed you, you just say it and you go take it to prayer. But all of a sudden, that understanding was given to me. They're preparing. So we need to prepare. We need to not be asleep. This is a wake-up call, saints. If you had no clue up into this video that we were this late in the game, so to speak, okay, that we were this late in the biblical prophecy timeline, now you know. Now you are accountable. Now it is your duty, and I behoove you to seek the Lord. Get your house ready. Get your hearts ready. Listen to the instructions of the Lord. Let him instruct you, because everybody's instructions are going to be different. Let him instruct you and anoint you to stand, to do whatever it is that he's called you to do, because the best place to be in this season is under the shadow of his mighty wings. The perfect place to be is in his perfect will for you. That's the only place to be. Anything outside of that is detrimental. Joanie, you want to close us out?
Yeah, the last thing I want to use is a verse where Jesus says for the final time as he stands over Jerusalem and says, weeping, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often have I desired that I would gather you under my wings as a hen doth gather her chicks under her wings, but thou wouldest not. Now your house is left unto me desolate." But I want to say this, that was for until he comes again in the second coming, and they will be gathered again unto him. He says it is his will that to gather all the Jews. See, there's a repatriation, a partial repatriation in 1948, but he's going to gather all of them himself. There's a time he's going to gather, not like the ones where you're making aliyah and you got to go through the Jewish National Council and you have to have your rabbi sign you off and promise that you're not a Christian. They're going to go there and evangelize. But he says it in several places, I will gather them. and bring them into their own land myself. And
Amen.
so you see, he has a determination because he loves his people, and they will be the chief of nations over all the earth. It says for the whole earth will bud and blossom and become fruitful.
Amen.
So they are the blessing of the earth. Amen.
Amen.
So trust the Lord. Trust the Lord what he's doing. It's painful. And we stand with you. Yes, we do. And we understand it's emotional, it's painful. But look to him. Jesus Christ is coming again. He's coming to set up his kingdom of righteousness and his iron rule. And we're pretty much there. Trust him in this process. Pray for the Jews. Pray for the people that are dying on both sides. Jesus says in Ezekiel 33:11, for I have no pleasure in the wicked that they die, but
Amen.
that they return to me and repent. Okay. And so let God be the revenger. He is coming to avenge. That's what he said he will do. The day of the vengeance of our God is right around the corner,
Amen.
and his day is at hand. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Joanie, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you. I appreciate all that you've shared with the group and the body of Christ today. For those of you who are interested in finding Joanie, you want to share that real quick with Joanie Stahl Field Notes where they can find you?
Yes, Joanie Stahl's Field Notes on YouTube, Rumble, and BitChute. It's up to you. You could choose one.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
it'll be fine. Yeah.
Well, as always, Saints, thank you for inviting us into your home today. God bless all of you. And until next time, shalom.